All right, here we go. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining in this afternoon. I will quickly introduce the elite panel that we have for the discussion. But as you have joined here, this webinar is all about how modernization as a key strategy within the overall digital transformation, initiatives that organizations are driving across has taken a lot of steam, for the last couple of years, 2024, 2025, and what we feel is 2026 is going to be the tipping point on the modernization initiatives that organizations are driving, and hence the right time. We are in the last month of the current calendar year, getting into the last financial quarter from an India fiscal perspective, and not a right time where we could have an elite panel discussing on this topic. So quickly, let me introduce the panel. We have Samir Saurabh. Samir is a senior technology and banking financial services leader with over 30 plus years of experience, having held various leadership roles across multinationals as well as domestic financial institutions. His journey includes impactful tenures as CTO at Daiwa Capital and HDFC Securities, where he led large-scale digital transformation initiatives. So that's Samir for you. Overall 30 years of a combination of business and technology expertise, and having driven many digital initiatives, and would be great to hear from him on this modernization piece as well. Uh, the second guest that I have is Raghu Prasad. Raghu is the Chief Technology Officer at Paramatrix Technologies Limited. He brings over 26 plus years of experience in enterprise software development, technology leadership, and he comes from a strong background of having done aeronautical engineering. So maybe I expect Raghu to touch upon some points, whether from a modernization perspective there's something that he can go back to his engineering days and also bring back some ideas through it. But he's led design, audit, delivery of complex software systems across India and global markets. He's in fact served on multiple SEBI working committees, and is a DSCI certified privacy lead assessor as well. So a lot of stuff that and one more point about Raghu is he's a very strong open source proponent, having contributed to the open source industry. So overall has seen both the guests that we have seen a lot of experience across digital initiatives. And just to introduce myself, I'm Vikram Kole. I am the moderator for this session. I hold more than 27 years of experience in the IT industry, right from the ERP days to what we stand today in terms of analytics, AI, and whatever cloud adoption and automation that we've been through. Right. So having introduced the panel, let's get to the topic. Tipping point. Right. So some hard fact numbers, right, as to why this topic is relevant. And one statement that I read from from a McKinsey report is 70% of the digital transformation budgets, that or 70% of the digital transformation initiatives are exceeding budgets, right? And that's a very hard hitting statement. And when the reasons for why these initiatives are exceeding budget, right, there have been 3 or 5 key reasons. Of course, there is a key strategy as a reason, key culture as a reason, the cross functional collaboration not being there, a lot of that across talent availability was all there. But one of the key elements for that is also the legacy systems and the technical debt. Now, these are two keywords when we talk about modernization. What is it that we have? Modernization is certainly, it comes across how do you take care of your legacy debt and legacy systems and technical debt, right? Now, these are startling facts. There are a whole lot of other numbers that I can talk about. Whenever digital transformation initiatives are being driven across, only 21% or only 30%, 21 to 30% of the organizations have seen technical debt not being an issue. That means about 70% of them still feel that a lot of technical debt is pulling back their digital initiatives. So that's a bit of a background in terms of how we will structure our presentation today, right? And one of the key aspects of how we are going to manage the show is, try to see across, why, what, how, when, those kind of things, and rightfully segmented across, stuff like that, right? So let me get to the panel in terms of, the first kind of a segment of questions where, you know the cost of inaction, right? We spoke about technical debt and legacy data. So Samir, what do you think, in terms of organizations learning to live with legacy systems, but then is certainly a cost to it, right? And what is that cost of inaction, right? I mean, things like, are there some hidden costs that financial institutes typically overlook, when maintaining legacy systems? What's your
Yeah.
take on it?
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's a very interesting topic, and as you rightly said, over 30 years, my experience, and I would say that if you really see the Indian demography, that the technology adoption started somewhere around 95, 96 when the private sector banks started coming up. I am just giving one example of a banking side. And if you have PSU banks, you know that they are already running for long. And so look at them, and you will find that still they have got a lot of legacy system still running, because whatever they did at that point of time was the perfect solution at that time. But now, if you see that journey of over 30 years, things are changing very fast. And if the adoption of new technology and new ecosystem, tech ecosystem is not happening, it is going to cost heavily in terms of commercial impact. So if you really see the what how much we bleed in terms of tech debt, like you take the simple example, slow release of the patches, or raising your rising infra bill, the talent will be running away from your outdated stacks. It will be very difficult to find the resources for those old tech, and once you get it, it will be very expensive thing. The other aspect in terms of like security, like legacy setups are just old and vulnerables. You will find that you will be struggling always with the unsupported OS or fragmented tooling and blind spots and other things. Then the most important thing comes in terms of the customer expectation. Now, customers don't want to wait for a month or so. They want next day or next minute the solution. And then if you talk about the innovation and the compliance part, that is another area where there is a high focus, and it becomes a regulatory requirement for NBFC. If you take it, like, you need the data now. Uh, it cannot be like other old systems are all fragmented. There are different systems for different kind of a business model or businesses. But even if you take banking, there will be some hundreds of products they are selling, and if they have a hundred of such legacy system, how will you get a single view for the customer? And if you need the compliance and regulatory reporting, that becomes a challenge. So it's a major overhead for any company which is running the legacy system to move fast and adopt the new technology and new tech stack. That's my take here.
Right. Raghu, your take on it?
See, one aspect which anyway technical debt and compliance related issues are there, that is there. One part which usually gets missed is that how much of your existing IT resources you are spending to maintain an inflexible system rather than going for redesigning and implementing something. This is an aspect where budgetary constraints come in. Anyway, all organizations work under budgetary constraints, and especially for banks, if you look at it, if you have a core banking system which is not very flexible and the new regulatory guidelines and changes keep coming in, then a major chunk of your resources are still going into patching the existing system, getting results somehow via Excel report or somehow something like that. So this is a critical thing which we also need to look into and identify that when we say that now enough is enough and now we need to modernize and find the better solution which is more flexible and interacting. Mostly I would say API driven solutions where multiple systems can talk to each other. That is one area which comes to my mind right now.
Right, right. So, Samir, I think very, very valuable inputs, right? I mean, you spoke about time to market, compliance, regulatory, but some of the most important point I think you mentioned across is how do I innovate? How do I disrupt my market with digital business and digital products, right? Because most of the, you may say banking is a service or banking is driven by banking products, right? Now that's a different discussion and debate altogether, right? But how do I even launch digital products when my foundation, on which the digital asset is going to ride on, is not going to support, right? I mean, we talk about the rubber hitting the road, but at the end of the day, is that rubber good enough to even kind of carry the load that I'm going to kind of ride on top of it, right? So any experiences that, yeah, that you feel that, because considering that you've been on the side of driving these initiatives, challenging the boards as to why these things are going to happen, look at customers from a business perspective and stuff like that. Any real life examples that you think the audience can hear from you?
Yeah, so I think the biggest jump in terms of or learning which came was during the COVID time, and that time everybody experienced that what a legacy system can do for you and why you need to replace them. Because see, that time everybody realized ki now it is everything is going to be digital, because that time work from home, a simple thing was a dream. Like nobody has ever thought of work from home, and that was the biggest challenge. So forget about that. And then when you talk about basically banking, lending, cards, and there are so many businesses are there. And when uh, you find this kind of a challenge, that time people started thinking, and if you see the maximum digitization work started during that time. And then the concept of microservices, then moving into cloud, then API driven economy, and these are the things people started talking, moving to cloud, Kubernetes, that making the Dockers. And so what happened in during this time or after this period, that people started realizing that data is not owned by a particular system. Basically, data is for everyone. And there was a lot of restriction that, okay, this is like saving account data, or this is like CASA data, or this is for the credit card data. But ultimately, when you need all this thing as a one view and cross sell, upsell, another thing, even if you go for the lending side, other NBFC or other, you have to have so many interfaces with the external world. KYC itself became a interface driven thing, where you are talking to multiple system. And there, if you are not, your legacy system is not supporting it, lot of people or lot of organization face major issues. And that's a very one very big highlight. Like this is, if you just take the KYC piece also, then you talk about the payment gateway side, like UPI has transformed. And not only that, the biggest challenge came in terms of the scale. Now, scale was like limited when you talk about the legacy system, because most of the things were hosted on prem. And when you see such kind of a surge in volume, how do you manage it? So and that means hardware is not so easy to get in, say, 10 days time or a month's time also it is possible. So you have to be in the cloud environment. And then people started talking about the cloud native solution. If you talk today, like if you have to open an account, even in a broking account or a bank account, now it happens in 5 minutes. That time nobody has thought about it. Now lending happens in, say, 10 seconds. Like there are some banks which are offering in 10. So how this happens? Because you have got the data of the credit, like your score is there, where on the basis of that score, you are giving the loan to that person. So all the data is compiled at one location, and then the risk management, the governance team, the compliance team, everybody is having that visibility, and the approval happens very fast. So these are the some of the advantages on the uh, moving into the new tech from the legacy. But yes, the question was like, how do we do it? Okay, identify the most critical business. Don't take everything at one go, but identify the most critical business. Your revenue is driven by that business. Then you take that as a priority, move around that, and build. Means you change that system to a new tech stack and slowly grow into the other part also.
Right. So I think, Raghu, one question for you, right? And I see that a lot of audience, we have C-level executives, CIOs, CTOs. We also have mid-level managers, IT managers, application heads. We have data experts on this webinar as part of the audience. We have, in fact, security professionals. Right? So it's a whole gamut of, if I consider, the three-pronged digital strategy, applications, data, security. We have a mix of all of this. So maybe, that's something that I just got to know once I saw the audience part of it. So maybe we can also leverage across that. Modernization is not just about, business application modernization, right? It's all about an entire digital modernization. So you might have security systems, you might have data systems, you might have application systems, you might have on-prem data centers. Actually, it's about how do you bring that entire foundation to a level where it can drive the next level of digital initiatives, right? But Raghu, one point across is we keep discussing this, right? And you and me have been part of a lot of these discussions with CIOs and CTOs of banks and BFCs, insurance companies, fintechs, and so on and so forth, right? One of the things that comes across is, it's riskier to modernize, right? I mean, why do I modernize? Maybe it's all about call it fear of modernization, what will happen. But how do you counter that particular thought, right? And it's not something like it's not an impractical thought, right? It's a practical thought. What will happen if things go wrong after modernization, right? And we've seen some of those examples. So what are your thoughts in terms of how organizations can plan better, right? In terms of and give them a kind of a low risk approach to modernization.
See, there are two part of it. First of the thing, we need to identify that what are the counter argument when you say that there is a risk in modernization, how it will affect my business flow if I try to change the system. So anyway, as Samir had said, it should never be an overnight change. It should be a phased implementation. But again, there are certain critical aspects. Before we go into that, first let us see that whether we really are ready to modernize. If you are not ready, are you looking into and comprehending the risks involved in not modernizing? So, for example, regulatory and compliance risks are there. You have a system which is running on a legacy platform where the data format itself is in a form which is not readily accessible, like an SQL or something. Or you even have data, but you don't know the interrelationship between that data. So, how even with putting a programmer and trying to get reports out of it, it is not an easy task. That is one aspect. Second is the risk associated with security vulnerabilities. So are those systems still being maintained? Many of the legacy systems, you will find that there are third-party service providers who are providing support, and the original developer has already folded the shop. That is also one of the case. So this is again a case where risk is very high, which is not apparently visible to you right now. The third is, are you ready to become irrelevant in your business where newcomers are cutting their teeth on the newer agile frameworks, solutions, etc. The new things which come in. We have seen some of the zero brokerage houses which has come up and changed the ecosystem of the industry completely. The traditional brokerage system, they felt the heat. So that is one aspect. You have not changed your business practices and your systems, and you are going to have it in your bucket. Now, when you look at all of these things and when you come to the conclusion that certain modernization is required, then the question is that how you are going for it. First of all, if you are already inside a room, you won't know how it looks from outside. You need a perspective from a different angle. You need to have a partner, technology as well as subject matter expert partner, who can guide you through this process. Because most of the time, even those companies which have their own IT team, you see that they are regularly busy with their daily BAUs. Whatever business requirements are there, they are struggling with that. They don't have time to revise. You need an entirely fresh look at your system from an external eye, as far as I can look at it. So that is, find a better business partner and a technology partner who can look into your system, who is already familiar with the legacy system. They have already done those application management, modernization. So that is one aspect. Second is the technology aspect. So when we say legacy systems or technology, etc., it is not just we are talking about a programming language or a framework as such. If you look at C, even in many critical systems, C is being used. And you look at Java, decades old programming stack, but they, you can't call that every Java stack is a legacy system. So identify which of the systems and technology stack you are comfortable with, your IT team is familiar with, and try to figure out that if I modernize using these stacks, who can assist me? What are the new frameworks which can be integrated into these systems and it can help me to modernize? When I talk about frameworks, there are frameworks which give you very low level stuff, like say Spring Boot in case of Java. So the question point is that that itself is not sufficient from an enterprise point of view, because for Spring Boot you need very skilled developer who can look at the architecture of the system, then build it for you. And many a times we find that in the industry the skills are not very cheap and they don't readily available even if you are ready to pay the price. So in
Hmm.
those cases, a different level of framework comes which works over that. So that is something like you already know a framework we have, that is Space, which works over the Java stack. And that kind of thing, which takes care of say 40% of your general plumbing requirement required in an enterprise application. That kind of solutions can fit in and you build on that foundation. That will have a better chance of success than building everything from scratch. And especially for banks, they are not the IT industry. They have an IT team, but they are not actually system designers. Their regular business is not like that. So this partner plus technology combination, when you go for it, that would reduce your risk considerably. That is my opinion on this.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, so I mean, good thoughts, Raghu, right? I mean, right on the point in terms of what is the practical situation on the ground, and this is what we face when we're interacting with BFSI organizations, right? So, Samir, I mean, we keep talking about to banks in terms of any kind of their new product initiatives, where Paramatrix as an organization has been part of from a product engineering to fruition perspective, right? And whenever we talk about concepts like cloud first, API first, mobile first kind of initiatives, there are a lot of hindrances, and we understand, regulation, integration, the cultural aspects, budgets, all these are aspects, right? But do you think, from a cloud native API, first kind of a environment, how do you see banks, financial services, or institutions in India, and per se, if you also have, since you worked with Daiwa in your earlier capacity, whether is India thinking differently uh, than the other countries, or is there a ready architecture around which these initiatives can really be onboarded by BFSI organizations, which certainly can be, a key modernization initiative for them?
Yeah, so I personally feel that India is way ahead of the world. Okay,
Right.
and and a lot of changes in terms of the cultural shift has happened. Like technology is not only the enabler, but technology has become a business. So if you talk about the CIOs, CTOs, they look at this from the business point of view, not only from the tech stack or managing the technology side. It's not a back end kind of a job. So what happens that most of the people I interact, they know that now regulation has become like regulatory requirement is like real time, okay, not periodic. Scale is no longer a predictable thing. So you talk about any kind of like uh, say $1 billion sale, or whatever things comes up, or even you take about the stock market related broking companies. These days a lot of discussion, because crypto companies are coming up for the crypto. The volumes and the scale is no longer predictable. Then the coming to the product velocity is now a survival metrics. Ask a question to Raghu, that a lot of people are have fear about this change, but you have to ask the question that what are they missing, so what, how much business they are missing. Somebody has to judge that also, because
Absolutely.
if that is not in balance, then there is a real problem. Because see, just take an example. Suppose you are flying and that plane doesn't have the facility of night landing. Do you think anybody will go into that flight? So it is something like that. If you try to open an account after 3 days, okay, where now the accounts are opening in 5 minutes in banks or any other like NBFC, you take it. Do you think somebody will come? And the patience of customer is like, there is no patience for them, because they have got a lot of options. So these are the things, like if you talk about, then you talk about the only data is not now shifted from reporting to decision making. So how do you combine all this data? That's why I'm saying, when we talk about some kind of a like 1 minute loan or pre-approved loan and other things, so data is coming as a decision making tool. And also the cost pressure is now structural, it is not cyclical. So you will find talent will be difficult to get. And even if you talk about, now we are talking about a lot of which I think Raghu will be able to talk more about that. Like, we have got now tools like cursor.ai, where you are ready to write a code in say 10 days, which used to take say 2 months time. But will it fit with your legacy system? These are the things people need to talk and think about it. That's where the new companies which are entering into this area, they are coming up with this new thought process. Your data is not only the structured data, a lot of work is happening only on the unstructured data. So how do you manage that? So if you have got the legacy, you're already like 10 years behind the your competitor who has just come in.
Right, right. No, absolutely, fantastic points on that, right? So, let's look at a perspective here, right? I mean, we've been talking about uh, outdated systems, right? And if you look at some of the some of the digital trends that have shaped the industry over the last decade or so, there came the automation, there came the cloud, there came the how do you kind of move from structured to looking at your unstructured data lake, and hence moving from data warehouse to a data lake house kind of an environment. And suddenly now we are spiking across, hey, what's you're doing on AI, right? And since the board has started asking CTOs, what are we doing on AI? And that's where I think that the whole point coming across is, are we left behind, right? That is where the whole aspect comes in. Cloud was easy because people could at least say that, hey, lift and shift, move to the cloud is my modernization strategy, right? But that immediately got into the bandwagon that suddenly when the first 2 years of OPEX budgets were looked at, and they said, hey, maybe my data center was not consuming that kind of a budget. As soon as I moved lift and shift, my cloud costs are going high, right? And that's where the entire aspect came across, is you can't just lift and shift to the cloud. You need to also modernize your systems to be agile, resilient, scalable, even on the cloud, so that you are effectively and optimally able to use the cloud assets, right? So having said that, certainly there has to be a method to it, right? As we all say, right? I mean, certainly there are the biggies who will drive saying that this is the way, my way or the highway, whatever you call across. But then enterprises are intelligent nowadays, right? We have a whole bunch of CIOs, CTOs who think in a completely different manner and not get bogged down with what the biggies are talking about, right? So various frameworks come across, right? I mean, do you kind of just refactor, you kind of, redevelop, or you just rehost, or you kind of retire some of the assets, whatever that strategy is, right? But how do you know, get across to that, right? I mean, some of the organizations might want to decide, hey, is refactoring the right perspective for me, or replacing is the right perspective for me, or just re-platforming or maybe re-hosting, could be some of those things, right? So some of these aspects, Samir and Raghu, if you guys can throw across, because both of you have done it as in different, wearing different hats. So any thoughts in terms of that particular approach that organizations should look at?
See, when you talked about cloud and related stuff, one buzzword you missed, that is big data. And big data
Right.
was a very big thing once upon a time. And I remember we were pushing some solutions to one of the CTOs, and we said that using big data, we will churn your data in 20 minutes, which it is taking 4 hours. So his stock reply was that even with 4 hours, I don't have any problem right now. Why I want it in 20 minutes? So when you see, the CXOs are pretty intelligent on that part. They know where the bottom line is there, what they have to do. So these buzzwords don't affect them much. But at the same time, you see that relevance of AI, especially in today's age, is very much there. As Samir said, using cursor or a peer AI, you can code faster. That is true, but still that requires someone overseeing it. There comes the partner who has to have that skill. The AI, if you give the AI to a less experienced developer, it is like giving a knife to a child. So the solution is AI itself is not the solution. AI with human intelligence is the solution, where you have your already productive team. You can easily extend their productivity by 40%, 50% by using the right AI tools. But if you want to just give the AI to any newcomer, and that is not going to solve your problem. You can't build a core banking application by just prompt engineering. So when we are talking about this API first design or the challenges which is there in the case, so API first design is definitely a solution, provided you have relevant frameworks, relevant people who understand those APIs, and the subject matter experts inside the client organization as well as in your partners, who can find out what type of functionalities you can easily be moved into microservices. So those kinds of solutions, if it is there, then you will be able to bring it up. So generally, what we find in the cloud native or cloud native systems, etc., that these are just tools. You need people, smart people, who can actually make something out of these tools. Today you have all those tools. You just do a cost benefit analysis and select a tool. That itself is not sufficient. Whether that tool is suitable for you, that is another angle which you have to look at it. And as I said earlier, you can't do it just by being a business user. You need technical expert, you need support staff who can guide you, technical architect, the BAs who have actually digged into your business. Then only you, as a collective decision, you can make on this front. That is my view on this.
Right, right. Samir, your thoughts when we are talking about refactoring or rehosting, any experiences
So
that you have, because
yeah,
sometimes
so
you
this
certainly have to retire a complete application, right? I mean, maybe
yeah, yeah.
that could be,
So
but
when you
yeah.
talk about, so it is about the impact and the risk. Okay, if I have to do that, so I will basically judge it in terms of what impact it makes and what is the risk associated with this. So like refactor, when the core logic is extremely solid, but the architecture is a problem or performance is problem, so then we have to work only on that. So we should keep the investment low but improves in terms of the agility. If you talk about re-platform, so sometimes we have to take this call of basically making it as a modern infrastructure when we talk about cloud containerization, API layers and other thing, without changing the business logic. So often it is used for the scaling and resilience, because there are not only the factor for all these volume base or business only, but it also depends on your these days most of the solution are talked about with the cybersecurity framework also. So these days when you are talking about re-platformification, what happens that it is not only the tech and the business or ops are sitting when you are writing or a code or you're writing a logic. Basically, the entire governance, the compliance and regulatory requirements are also spoken at that point of time when you are defining the new architecture. Not only that, so we have done where the entire observability, which becomes a very critical point, because any downtime is now regulators are very strict about this. There are means even for 1 minute downtime in one of your ecosystem, if it is impacting the customer, you have to report and you have to give thousands of explanation that why it happened, when it happened, what was the measure taken. So that's what I'm saying. When you talk about this platformification of the legacy system, these thoughts are coming there. And if you have got absolutely obsolete system or unsupported system when you talk, then you can go for the replacement. So basically, it has to be a decision has to be taken on the basis of the impact and the risk associated. It can't go complete whole all out on replacing everything. So it has to be based on certain impact.
Right.
So on the refractor front, I have certain 4 or 5 steps which I usually have been practicing when application modernization related work comes up, which can be useful for some of the people. I agree whatever Samir has said. I agree on that. So this modernization approach cannot be having a hands off way. You cannot just give it to someone and expect that a completely new modernized system you will get. So there are certain steps which the client themselves have to work on. First is that they have to identify the pain points. What are the pain points? Whether it is due to the lack of support staff or compliance related, whatever it is there, you prepare a list of major pain points which should be addressed in this modernization drive. Then the second is that refactor the existing code using skill development team using the AI tools if the code is available with you. In many cases these are the third party systems who even code is not available, then there a different approach has to be maintained where you build an adapter layer, replace certain parts one by one. That is another approach. The step becomes the stale tech stack which is accumulating the tech debt, the technology debt that has to be identified and has to be replaced. And there again you need the consultancy, you need assistance, that which one will serve you better, where the resources are cheaper right now which you can employ on this. And on the other hand comes the next step is the identifying the architecture of the new system. If there is already a framework which you have chosen, you can build over that. Otherwise you need a system architect to build it from scratch, and then create an in-house team which will actually oversee, which will understand how things are being done. Because once the system is developed and given to you by your partner, you have to run it, so that internal detail should be there. And the last but not the least is that it is not necessary that all the things you have to build yourself. There could be products or accelerators. If there is a BI tool requirement, there may be a BI tool like Excite or something which can serve, say, 80% of your needs. And you take it up and build the remaining 20%. That would be much more economical than building the whole system from the scratch, which itself has taken decades to build up.
Right, right. So I think pertinent points, right? So one practical example comes to my mind is where we have taken over a couple of legacy applications of a customer, and then the whole idea was customers was incurring a lot of cost even maintaining, managing
Yeah,
those applications in-house.
yeah, yeah.
So we kind of
Licensing
help
of that
them
other. Yeah,
reduce the cost of managing that technical debt by moving it into more of a managed services kind of an environment plus a fixed team. And then
true.
eventually there was a parallel team which could eventually move the architecture to a much more modernized way, and then they're cloud ready. Of course they have not gone to the cloud, but whenever cloud is an option for them, they can certainly
You
move
can
on to the
go.
cloud, right?
Yeah.
So this is where collaboration is the key, right? Everything getting done, just adding people. And that's one of the areas that we've seen organizations doing is let's add more better futuristic skill sets to the team and try to do it. But barring any frameworks which come proven frameworks, I don't think so. And one of the elements that what Raghu mentioned, assessing, architecting, accelerating, adopting, these are specific frameworks which come from an experience, backing those up, right? So it's important to that. I think I just came across one question while this was happening across, right? And this dovetails to what Samir mentioned, earlier in his discussion, right? Around, let's look at phased modernization as an element, right? Don't do everything, immediately and all that. But I think we have one data expert, whoever it is on in the audience, who's raised this question, that if we look at, data modernization, right? And I think this question specifically might be coming across some AI initiative that has come across, right? Is there also possible that data modernization can also be done in a phased manner, as compared to maybe you have different legacy applications and you modernize them in bunches or whatever stuff that it is? But how do you drive phased data modernization, right? Because that will typically come across that your AI engine, if AI is the end outcome, whatever use cases, whether it's fraud analytics, or whether it's NPA analytics, or whether it's agentic AI related initiatives, or whether it's simple prompt based information delivery or suggestions or advisory to your customers, right? Any thoughts on the data modernization piece from both of you?
So pure tech on the pure technical front, the when you go for data modernization, data is already there in some form, whether in a SQL server or in a NoSQL or even plain text-based data. So when you talk about phased manner, that means you cannot mix two different data models into the same data repository. So when you are talking about phased manner of modernization, then whatever you are doing with the application module, similar approach has to be taken for the data model also. You identify which models are most corrupted, unmanageable, which contains stale data, which are the things where multiple sources are pushing in the same kind of data and duplicating it. So overall, your data quality is very low. So in that case, you can implement phased modernization, where you identify the data model first, then identify the entities and identify from which source the data you are going to trust, and keep a separate repository for that, and do it in parallel when your existing system is running. And the services which require very pure form of data, you fetch from this repository and serve the customer. And at the same time, your legacy system is still using the old hodgepodge way of data which is already there in certain set of repositories. Of course it is possible, but again here comes the synergy between the partner and the client, where you identify their business needs and identify which section of the application is going to use certain models of data, and you remodel them. This is practically possible. I completely agree with that. It is possible, and it should be the way in which, if you are actually changing your application in a phased manner, then data models should also be changing in the same manner. You cannot have it in a big bang in one and do it in a phased manner in the other one.
Right.
Yeah,
Samir, you
completely.
have any thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree with Raghu that data cannot be, I believe, cannot be done in isolation, because in the legacy system, it is like system owned the data. So core banking will have their own data, card system will have their own data, CRM will have their own data. So these way, but the modern data architecture flip this, like data is treated as a shared asset, so it's owned by the business domain rather than the system. So uh, it is like you want it, like whether it has to be for analytics or risk or compliance, they will not have to get uh, they will not have to come to the system owners, but they have to go to the domain owners. So that's how the data will move. And in terms of like when you talk about most of the silo system nowadays, like people are looking for the real time data. So whether it is like business analytics, decision making requirement, compliance requirement, regulatory requirement, anything, it's the master data stops becoming I would use the term political, and it will be used like a democratic thing which could be accessible to anyone, but with the proper control. So you will have certain data which will be masked for someone, and certain data which will be not accessible to, like say, branch user, or when you are talking about the organization hierarchy, or something, when you talk about the business verticals, the data will be shown to them, but certain data will be masked, certain data will not be shown, depending on that. So these things are basically in terms of the access of data, that should also get restricted from that. So there will be some data which will be completely encrypted, some data will be like required for your for your analytics and AI. When you talk about, you need this kind of a changes, but you have to take care of how the application also becoming modernized, or the platform changes are happening.
I think we have lost Vikram there. So, as you have said, Samir, I agree with that masking part. Something I remembered when you talked about masking. So when we are talking about compliance related stuff, there are various frameworks like GDPR is there and
Yeah,
HIPAA is there. Those are there
DPDP.
where you will be heavily penalized if your data gets leaked. So those kinds of constraints are there. Even in India, these data privacy laws are there. So when you
Yeah,
are looking at those modernization part, you should ensure that your system itself supports that kind of data masking. You cannot leave it to the end developer who will actually implement the code where mask the
yeah.
PII, whatever personally identifiable information is there. You need a framework where you can, at the master level, you can go and specify that on this object A, these attributes should be masked for these vendors because they are third party service providers. They should not be visible. So something
Yeah,
like this,
even
yeah,
even for the DPDP, which has come up, so
yeah.
there also it becomes very critical in terms of that data. Who will be able to see that data?
So I see that even today, various organizations are not understanding this part, that this data governance part, you need really a good framework where these things are centrally managed and auditable. When we were talking about these things, even Vikram might be remembering, when we are talking about PACE framework, where these kinds of modules were inbuilt specifically for these GDPR kind of scenarios, where the compliance is especially asking you to mask certain things from certain users. And these today's environment where so much data leaks are happening, this kind of frameworks to be used when you are modernizing, it is quite essential. Yes, Vikram, we
Absolutely.
have lost you in
Yeah.
between.
Yeah. I think there was a bit of a blip, right? So I
Mhm.
think, yeah. So from a data modernization perspective, I think good points out there. I mean, a few takes from my side is organizations are moving from an era where they spent a lot of time, architecting, structuring most of their structured databases into a data warehouse, right? And that data warehouse essentially had one purpose, which was first was the reporting and the business intelligence and the dashboards and the MIS that can be very well streamlined across, some bit of regulatory reporting which can be streamlined across, right? Seldom it was typically where you are going to get the outcome of a data warehouse and straight away take it to your customer. Example is today, if I want to acquire a customer, I need data in action, right? So data warehouse was more, and suddenly when you're moving to a play where, I mean, if you look at today, the digital commerce industry, it thrives on it. And similarly, when you go to the banking industry, you still want to thrive on it. But they are tied with a lot of regulations and risks and other elements that come into fray, right? And that's where it becomes much more as in aspirational in terms of how do you get there, right? And I've seen shifts, right? I mean, a lot of digital commerce CIOs and CTOs, when they move to a banking or a fintech kind of an environment, and suddenly say, hey, I got the roadmap ready, but then how do I do across? So some of those challenges will be there, but at the end of the day, as Raghu mentioned, and some part of it, Samir talked about, is how do you plan an approach. And planning is the key, framework is the key. Just writing an AI model is much more easier, I think, as compared to making it functional, practical, and be part of your digital business, right? So that's where I think an outside in view comes across from that perspective, right? So one key element, and we spoke about the customer side of data aspect coming across, and we still are what we got 10 more minutes, so maybe a couple of, maybe one last question to both of you, and then we'll try to see, if we can summarize, or if we have one more time for one more question, I'll take that across accordingly, right? So one of the aspects that come across is, which are those leading business indicators that you can think are really driving the need for modernization, right? I mean, of course, you have regulatory environments, you have customer experiences, you have balance sheet growth to be shown across. Ultimately, what are those top, if I want to put you on the spot and say, hey, what are those top two that each one of you think are going to be the real reasons why organizations want to look at modernization from a different perspective for 2026?
I would go for my topmost priority will be the customer experience, because ultimately everything, your bottom line, your operational cost, your everything depends on that. So whether you call it top line or whatever. So for me, the customer experience is number one. And if I have to take the second one, then I would take cybersecurity and governance or regulatory requirement, because these are the two things which will be ultimately hitting your top line and bottom line also. Yeah.
Right.
So from my point of view, these are the top two things.
Right. So
I
Raghu?
agree. I agree with Samir on these two primary things because bottom line matters a lot, and customers are the king anyway. So this part is there, but one of the thing I see that there is a big buzz about artificial intelligence and how it can reduce the resources on the manpower cost is one of the major area where companies would be looking into reduction in that, and I see AI coming into that. It is not there till now, people are experimenting, but AI is the one of the area where they would like to use AI to reduce the manpower cost. The companies want to reduce the entry level programmers job by moving on to AI driven platforms. Same thing applies for say data entry operators. Today, for even for bank, when the people are submitting their PAN cards and other documents, someone manually has to sit, scan. Even OCRs are perfect, not perfect. So people have to check. So those manual intervention would easily be taken away by AI. So that is one of the area where they would like to modernize their tech stack and want to see that, as Samir said, 5 minute account opening is only possible when someone is automatically checking your credentials, checking your CIBIL score, and all the other relevant stuff for loan, etc. And this AI, I think, will be taking up. So these three things will drive, as I say, that customer experience, this uh, compliance related issues and cyber security, and this resource intensive tasks people would like to offload to AI.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I think we still have about 7 odd minutes or 6.5 minutes. Maybe one last question that I can, take to both of you, right? I mean, we spoke about, um, we started with cost, the opportunity cost of not doing anything. Then we spoke about, the entire approach to how do you get to the modernization part. But going into 2026, I mean, let's say all organizations hear us and decide on the modernization path. Post modernization, what are your suggestions to these organizations, right? Because I don't think so modernization is just a one time exercise, right? When you're actually getting it, maybe the current stage is you missed those 5 6 steps, and hence you want to kind of overcome those 5 6 steps in one large modernization exercise, right? But certainly, how do you make modernization be part of the overall digital initiative culture that you are building for an organization?
So when I look at it, I can think of what will indicate whether you have modernized or not. The one of the indicator will be that your data is completely well governed, clean, and you have suitable APIs. So this API first approach, if you have opted for, so that your systems can be integrated with third party systems, then you can be sure that you are right on the modernization path. The second part is that along with data, is there enough metadata available? I am talking in purely in terms of technical aspect, because metadata is something which we generally ignore. We have customers information and related stuff, but from where this information has come, who has provided it, what is the credibility of that source, those are the part of metadata which gives you the context. So as AI is going to be used heavily in future, so this metadata will matter a lot. So if your metadata and data both are properly stored and well managed under your control, then you can say that your modernization approach has succeeded. And then becomes the security becomes the linchpin in this whole ecosystem. AI driven security, manual monitoring systems which are able to log your activity properly, and then you feed these logs into AI system to identify the issues. This is one area where if you are more peaceful after this operation, and you find that you can rest with peace in this particular security aspect, then you are successful. And one critical thing is that it is matching with what Samir has said about the customer experience. There will be stress on real time or near real time data. Today you see that the legacy organizations, the old organizations, do EOD based updates of their data warehouse, data lake, etc. This is not going to survive very long, as I think, because customers will keep on demanding that when I do some transaction, even if credit card transaction is done, I want it to be reflected immediately in my statement when I go online and see it. So that is an area where certain accelerators would be required, and that new systems are to be built which will give you near real time updates. If that is being done with your data pipeline, then you are on the right place. Even with AI, if you are sure that your guardrails are in place, you are not having some AI which is very biased, which is going to affect the customers, then you are. So these are the some of the indicators where you can be sure that you are on the right path. And once that is done, you will reap the benefit in terms of much better customer engagement, much better top line, bottom line, etc.
Got it. Got it. Any
Yeah.
thoughts, Samir, that you have on the post
Yeah. So
modernization? Yeah.
yeah, so basically, my whatever we are doing or we will do, let's assume any organization, I would suggest that there has to be a process of regular review. And how is it impacting your business? Like, are you able to go to the market fast, time to market, or in terms of the velocity of the product rollout and other things? How are you doing? So basically, it's the role where the CXO, especially CFO, Chief Business Officer, Chief Digital Officer, will be reviewing these things, because ultimately you have to find that what are you getting from this modernization. Then is it uplifting your revenue? Is it reducing your cost? Is it reducing the dependency on human being? How the risk and compliance are met? And how are your reliability and observability is working, like whether your outage has come down for particular channels. And so these are some of the things which, as if I have to take it as a tech leader in the organization of BFSI, I would focus on these areas once we start this activities of modernization of our applications.
Absolutely. I think point taken. So a practical example that I can also give across is as part of one of the data modernization programs that we ran across. We helped the customer identify that, one is of course the objective was to build AI models. The other aspect was streamline a lot of reporting and all of that. But one of the objectives that we discussed with the board was, how many people within the organization do you plan to empower using this data exercise, right? Earlier data warehouse was only about 200 odd dashboards that were to be developed, and that was the whole objective, right? Here it was close to about 15,000 people. Can data go into their hands day in day out and help them perform better or make their job easier, right? Now that's one key benchmark, and that has driven across in terms of why this data modernization initiative was such a great initiative for them, right? So we're just about time, unfortunately, but thanks, audience. I think some of the key takeaways has been, modernization is the key to drive your futuristic digital initiatives. But at the end of the day, it just isn't a magic wand that comes your way. Uh, think about it, plan about it, have the right approach to it. Potentially look at an outside in view rather than just an inside view. And I think that should keep you ready for your overall cloud native, API first, mobile first, whatever are the futuristic AI enabled digital initiatives that you want to drive across. So it was a great discussion. Samir, thanks a lot for your time. Raghu, thanks a lot for your time. Looking forward to catch up with you guys once again sometime soon. And the audience, thanks for being there. We have a lot of questions, but I know there was because of paucity of time, but we'll reach out to you, and maybe some of these experts are available, as per your convenience. Yeah. So thanks a lot, and have a great day, whatever is
Thank
left
you.
of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Samir. Thanks, Vikram.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.